Using a cleaver to make a crock pot stew. William Hovey Smith, 2019. I'm the author of Backyard Deer Hunting, and I do wild game cooking, and I also make knives. And in this case, I'm using a rather oversized cleaver to make a stew, and it's a little bit of an overkill. This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And today I've got on my knife-making cooking cap for Hovey's Knives of China, because we are going to be testing out the new cleaver that I built just yesterday. And I test my knives. So we're actually going to use this cleaver to build up a crock pot stew. Now, for those of a generation who don't remember the crock pot, here is one. And this was the original design of slow cooker that really took on a significant place in the market. And your mother had one and your grandmother had one, but you probably haven't seen it except on the back shelf somewhere gathering dust. Nonetheless, these are very efficient cooking tools. And particular, like today, it is noon, and I'm going to make my supper in a crock pot. I'm going to do a venison stew from some meat that I found in a tub that was left over from last year that I need to consume. And I'm going to use my cleaver to do most of the work. I understand there are those of you who don't own a can opener. Well, this is a manual can opener. And it works just like this. And opens these tin cans you find in supermarkets. Yep, works every time. And we're going to start by putting some liquid in our crock pot here. So that's a can of corn. Now this can has a more common pull tab on it. So you just open and dump. And I suppose that this is going to be the universal standard. So we have our tomatoes, tomato sauce, and corn in the crock pot now. I have recipes in my outdoor self-cover books, and these include extreme muzzleloading, backyard deer hunting, crossbow hunting, and practical bow fishing. My newest book is a business book, Create Your Own Job Security. Plan to start your own business at midlife. And this is a book that encourages everyone at any age to become an entrepreneur. And we'll have more about it at the end of the video. Alrighty, about this cutting business. We're going to start out with some carrots. That looks good. Carrots can be sweet or bitter. So you really want to taste them and see what you've got here. Now these are somewhat on the strong side, so I'm not going to use quite as many. And we'll see if we can chop them in mass here. Okay. This is a glass cutting board beneath. I don't want to stress it that much. Now, let's try a tomato. Okay. I like Romas. Now, garlic. And salt through the base here. I want a slight taste of garlic, but I don't want it to be too strong. Minced it up fine. With a nice bell pepper. We'll use about 1/4 of the pepper. Now, see how we do on onion. This heavy blade is working, but it is really somewhat fatiguing on the hand to use. Now that we have the vegetables chopped, we're going to start on the meat. Thus far, my conclusion is, yeah, the knife works, and if you had nothing else, you could make do with it. But this thick blade, which is desirable for chopping and doing, heavy work like you're working on a carcass or cutting large hunks of meat, it's just too heavy and a tad too thick for the work I'm doing with it. Plus the grind on the blade for delicate slicing is not of the best. For those who are keeping up with the stew recipe, we've added all the vegetables that we've chopped and also a half a can of water just to keep enough fluid to keep everything wet and covered. But we still have enough room for the meat. And now we have our cut meat, which has been in the freezer for approximately a year. You can see it's still fleshy, it's not oxidized. When I froze it, I put a little cap of this plastic over the top of it, and it kept it very fresh indeed. Now, I'll need to dice it up, and I'll use a cleaver for that, as well as take some of the less desirable muscle tendons, this white material, out of it. But as a raw product, it looks fine. Whilst the deer meat is draining, I'm making up our seasoning flour, which is going to be used to coat the meat as I brown it. Because this will be a browned product going into the stew. And I'm going to add salt, but not that much. Approximately a heaping teaspoon of salt, pepper, approximately half a teaspoonful of pepper, and dill weed, approximately half a teaspoon of dill weed. And this will be used to coat the venison prior to browning. This venison is still losing some water, and so we're going to pat it with a paper towel as we take the hunks out and further process them, just to get rid of some of the excess water. Let's say almost anything with white on it is to be removed. Now we guys typically like our stews bulky, so this one is. The pieces of meat are fairly large. Most women prefer it with smaller dices. If you have someone who has chewing problems or bad teeth or no teeth, well, obviously you'd want to chop it smaller than I'm doing here. These membranes come mostly from the shoulder, which is what I believe this particular batch of meat actually came from. The little bits that I'm trimming will not be wasted. They go into hound dog food. Get browned up for him. We've now removed the heavy connective tissue from those pieces of meat, and you see the reject pile there on the side of the board. And now I'm going to heat some oil, and we're going to brown that material in the flour and proceed to add it to the stew. On the stove, we're coming along fine. Our trimmings for hound dog are doing nicely, and Hector will enjoy those much. And our meat is browning. I put rather too much in the frying pan, but I'm not after appearance now, just getting flavor. Ideally, one would have put less meat in the pan. The old axiom, don't crowd the meat if you want a pretty result. Well, I'm not interested in pretty, I'm just interested in getting the job done. So I socked it all in there at once. So it's sort of boiling and stewing and frying and doing all of this kind of good stuff. But in the meantime, it's getting cooked. Well, our meat is now browned. And our crock pot is on and steaming, as you see, and it's time to add our meat. Now the temptation is to go ahead and eat all the meat, so don't do that. Remember, you made it for the stew, not to snack on right now. All right, and mix it and stir it in. It's pretty thick, as you see. I'm going to add a little more water. Now that's about the right consistency. You will lose some through evaporation, but not much. Now that can sit there right happily for a while. I've got it on high and I'm going to let it come to a boil, and then I'm going to turn it down to low. And when I come back in about 4 or 5 hours, my supper will be done. Well, now 4.5 hours later, we will see what we have done here. This is our stew, of course, and we poured it up a few minutes ago. As you can see, it's quite thick. What we've got for taste here. This is a robust stew. I can taste everything in it. A little bit of garlic there. Well, if you like your stew al dente, this is done. Certainly everything is cooked. It's certainly safe to eat. Could do with a little more cooking. A little more salt. Not much, but a little. And this stage is when you really want to salt your soups and stews, at the end, not in the middle, because you don't know quite how much salt all these additives have. The tomato products in particular can sometimes carry a lot of salt. That did it. Yeah, I'm going to let it perk here for a while longer. Well, how did our cleaver do? This was like hiring a sumo wrestler to put sprinkles on top of cupcakes. This is just a big, heavy, robust knife. Yes, it will do this fine detail cutting if you have nothing else, but there are many other knives better suited for the work. For now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe, goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.
In Create Your Own Job Security, I advocate that everyone at any age actually start their own businesses to become used to the idea of becoming an entrepreneur, as well as to raise money as and when it is needed. The ultimate objective is to start your own business, so that when you're in your 40s or later and you suddenly get a layoff notice in your check, well, you have your own business going and quietly running in the background. And at that time, in the midst of the worst depression you've been in your entire life, you don't have to think of, well, what the blazes do I do now? My new cleaver really didn't get a fair shake in this, and it was called upon to do work this knife is really not designed to do. So consequently, I'm going to do another video that'll show the cleaver doing the work it was designed for. For more information on my books, blogs, and more than 725 videos, you can go to my website, www.hoveysmith.com. For more information on my Hovey's Knives of China knives, you can go to hoveysKnivesofChinablog.co. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye, and God bless.